The mandate of heaven was a Chinese political and religious doctrine that justified the rule of emperors. This doctrine held that a ruler's legitimacy came directly from divine approval. It originated during the Zhou dynasty around 1100 BCE. The concept emerged as a way to legitimize the overthrow of the Shang dynasty. Emperors were believed to receive this mandate through their moral and just governance. Good leadership was seen as a sign that the emperor had the heavens' favor. Losing the mandate of heaven was often linked to natural disasters or famines. Such calamities were interpreted as heavenly warnings of an emperor's misrule. Confucian scholars played a significant role in developing the theory. They emphasized the importance of virtuous rulership to maintain harmony. The doctrine provided a mechanism for rebellion against corrupt leaders. Rebels could claim they were restoring the mandate to more deserving rulers. The mandate of heaven was not hereditary. Any ruler could lose it. Succession did not automatically guarantee a new emperor's legitimacy. It was used to legitimize the rise of the Zhou dynasty over the Shang. The Zhou claimed they replaced the Shang because of their moral failings. Emperors would perform rituals to ensure they retained the mandate. These ceremonies were designed to demonstrate their piety and virtue. Natural disasters were sometimes manipulated by political opponents. Critics would use such events to argue that the emperor had lost legitimacy. The concept influenced the behavior of officials and commoners alike. Everyone was expected to support the ruler who had the mandate. The mandate of heaven was central to the idea of the mandarins. These scholar officials were tasked with upholding moral standards. It was not a rigid system, but rather a flexible principle. The mandate could be reinterpreted depending on the ruler's actions. The doctrine allowed for peaceful transitions of power when necessary. A new dynasty could claim the mandate without bloodshed. The mandate of heaven was also tied to agricultural success. A bountiful harvest was seen as a sign of the emperor's righteous rule. Philosophers like Mencius expanded on the concept of the mandate. He argued that the people had the right to overthrow unjust rulers. The doctrine helped prevent excessive concentration of power. Rulers had to balance their authority with moral responsibility. It was used to justify the establishment of the Han dynasty. Liu Bang claimed his rise to power was divinely sanctioned. The mandate of heaven discouraged absolute monarchy. Emperors were expected to consult with advisors and act justly. The concept was often invoked during times of social unrest. People would question the emperor's legitimacy during rebellions. The doctrine was adapted by various dynasties to suit their needs. Each dynasty interpreted the mandate differently to reinforce its rule. The mandate of heaven was not a static idea, but evolved over time. Its interpretation changed based on philosophical and political developments. It was closely linked to the idea of the mandate of virtue. Emperors were expected to embody moral virtues to retain the mandate. The doctrine was used to legitimize the rise of the Song dynasty. Zhao Kuan-yin claimed his rule was divinely ordained after unifying China. The mandate of heaven was not limited to emperors alone. Local officials were also expected to uphold the mandate within their regions. It provided a framework for evaluating the effectiveness of government. The mandate served as a standard for assessing the quality of rule. The concept was influential in shaping Chinese political thought. It became a cornerstone of Confucian political philosophy. The mandate of heaven was not solely a religious doctrine. It also had strong political and ethical dimensions. The doctrine was used to explain the rise and fall of dynasties. Each change in power was attributed to shifts in the mandate. The mandate of heaven was often cited during peasant uprisings. Rebellious leaders would claim they were restoring the mandate to the people. The concept was also applied to foreign relations. Diplomats used the mandate to justify China's position as the Middle Kingdom. The doctrine was central to the idea of the Son of Heaven. Emperors were considered direct descendants of heaven, responsible for the realm. The mandate of heaven was not a fixed contract between heaven and ruler. It was a dynamic relationship that could be gained or lost. It was used to legitimize the establishment of the Ming dynasty. Zhu Wanqiang claimed he had the mandate after driving out Mongol rule. The doctrine was sometimes challenged by Buddhist and Taoist thinkers. These schools of thought offered alternative explanations for political legitimacy. The mandate of heaven was not universally accepted by all Chinese. Some philosophers rejected the idea in favor of other political theories. The concept was closely tied to the idea of heaven's will. Emperors were expected to align their policies with what heaven desired. The mandate of heaven was used to justify the Qing dynasty's rule. The Manchus claimed their rise was divinely sanctioned after the Ming fell. The doctrine was often cited in imperial edicts and decrees. Emperors would invoke the mandate to legitimize their policies. The mandate of heaven was not limited to China's borders. The concept influenced neighboring countries and cultures. It was used to explain the decline of the Tang dynasty. The Tang's fall was attributed to a loss of the mandate due to corruption. The doctrine was central to the idea of harmony between heaven and man. Emperors were expected to maintain balance in the world. The mandate of heaven was not a purely theoretical concept. It had practical implications for how emperors governed. The concept was used to legitimize the rise of the Sui dynasty. Yang Jian claimed his rule was divinely sanctioned after uniting China. The mandate of heaven was often cited in imperial examinations. Candidates were tested on their understanding of the mandate and its applications. The doctrine was not immune to manipulation by ambitious officials. Some would exaggerate natural disasters to undermine the current ruler. The mandate of heaven was central to the idea of rectification of names. Proper titles and roles were seen as essential for maintaining the mandate. The concept was used to explain the rise of the Yuan dynasty. Kublai Khan claimed his rule was divinely sanctioned after conquering China. The mandate of heaven was not a monolithic idea, but had multiple interpretations. Different schools of thought offered varying perspectives on the mandate. The doctrine remained influential even after the collapse of imperial China. Its legacy can still be seen in modern Chinese political thought.